Welcome to the Get Published podcast, sponsored by Brodie Consulting Group. To get more information about our coaching, publishing, executive ghostwriting, and podcast production services, go to getpublishedpodcast.com. Hello, I am Paul Brodie, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Get Published podcast, where we help authors get published with a proven system that works. Today, we're being joined by Ayman Elsawah, author of Breaking In, a step-by-step guide to starting a career in information security. Ayman, welcome to the show.
Hi, Paul. Thanks for having me.
How did I do in the pronunciations?
You did great. You did great. Thanks so much.
All right.
Yeah.
Excellent. Are you ready to get started?
I am. Let's do this.
All right. Question number 1. What is the one piece of advice that you would give to a first-time author who is currently writing their book?
So, first-time author, the one thing I would say is, and as you're currently writing, so you've decided to write it, you're going forward, I would say the number one advice that helped me is to finish the book. Like, just make that your primary goal. Finish the book. A lot of times we're really nervous. We don't know, we don't feel like the book's ever done. We keep rearranging chapters and things like that. And I found that, that the process could really drag on for quite some time. So put yourself, put some sort of date, but take it easy on yourself. If you slip by a little bit, that's fine. But at least have some sort of, especially since you've already started writing it, you could kind of estimate when you're going to finish it and just decide, hey, I'm going to finish this book. Like let's just get it done. Because there's still the editing and all the other steps as part of getting a book out there.
And what do you feel is the hardest part about getting published?
Honestly, it's the editing. You feel like you're never done. It's good to have a trusted editor, someone that can review your work with your voice, because you have a certain voice that you're trying to narrate with. And so having a good editor that is on board and can understand your language and your audience is really good. And because, with the tools these days, we could just keep editing and changing things. But again, we feel like we're never done. So having a good editor to kind of help you along is really good.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I always tell people the easiest part is getting the book written, getting it spoken out, getting it out there. The biggest challenge, though, is the editing and, of course, the proofreading. I think those are by far the two most difficult parts when it comes to actually getting that book out there, because you're right. Nothing's ever going to be perfect. So the main thing you have to realize is, one, done is better than perfect. Get it out there. And then when you're potentially making updates or when you're creating a second edition, then you can go in there and make those tweaks, because it's never going to be perfect. And you've got to accept that.
That's right. And it's something as a first-time author as well, I learned that, first of all, editing is different than proofreading. So that was an interesting lesson there. Mm-hmm. But also, with everything, with dynamic publishing, a lot of times books are printed at the time of order. So you can have confidence, and with digital copies and everything, you can make updates later. And that's your choice. You can do that. And, it actually makes the book more alive, and the audience will appreciate that. And so, understanding that process is really paramount.
Well, let's talk about marketing. So please share a marketing strategy that you have used in your book launch that has worked well.
So I've used social media. I have a podcast as well. I've put on the podcast, or I mentioned it on the podcast. I think for me, what's worked well as of late, because my audience sometimes is not on social media yet, or have not heard the podcast, doing some in-person, talks, going to schools and going to career fairs, things like that, talking with other professors and those that are out there that are helping those trying to get into the field and get into security has been beneficial. So that's some of the best feedback I've gotten have been from meeting people in person. But online is the way to go. So that's something that I'm working with as well.
And what are some online strategies have you implemented with your launch?
Well, targeted ad campaigns are good too. Twitter, hopping, just being part of the conversation. I think going in places where people are asking these questions and just helping them out has been good. I try not to be so direct necessarily. I just, my approach generally has been just help people, and they will find you, or they'll find the resources, like your book and the podcast, accordingly. So, hopping onto Quora, Discuss, forums, Reddit has been useful too. So there's a lot of different angles to go.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Quora, because you're actually, believe it or not, 321 episodes in, you are the first person to mention that specific strategy, which is really surprising. But with all these
Oh,
episodes, you're the first one that's really talked about that. So could you tell us a little bit more about that process and some strategies that you're using to build those connections?
well, I mean, I'm not a good example because I haven't done too much yet, but it's a factor of time. But yeah, it basically hopping on there and taking a look at the questions, um, targeting or going on Quora and figuring having it learn what your profile is, so that when there's questions related to your field, it'll come to you. Being available for questions, and then taking the time to write good answers to some of these questions. So you should see some. I mean, some of these answers are like full-blown articles, and
Yeah.
so and that's been my other approach is I like to write articles. So before I started writing the book, I started writing articles, and it was getting myself in that mindset of storytelling. And so yeah, so going on these forums and answering the questions and helping people out, trying not to be too salesy, because hopefully they'll click on your profile and see that you wrote a book and go down that rabbit hole.
Well, and one thing that they have changed in the past few months too is they are not letting you really do any more calls to action. Because I used to be pretty active on there as well over the past few years. And one of the things that I would always do is I would answer questions. I'd get a lot of publishing questions, marketing questions. And I was always very transparent about advice. Like, hey, this is what we've done. This is how it's worked. And if you'd like to get some more information, you can grab a free copy of my book, or you can reach out to me via email. And what they did was I actually received a notice a few months ago going, hey, we need you to make these changes. We have changed our privacy policy, and we're no longer going to let you guys do calls to action at the end, which kind of sucked because we were
Ah,
given quality information, and that's just a great way for lead generation to build those connections because people do want to get to know you better. But I think there are some people that may have been abusing that a little bit too much. So now you can't necessarily put in a call to action, but they're gonna, if they connect with you, they like your answer, they can go to your page on Quora, and they can see that you've got a link on there. It's like, hey, get more information, go to my website, and they can go to it that way. But it used to be that on every single answer you could put a call to action, and that's one thing that they've really changed. And I think it may have also to do with GDPR and some of the other security things that have come up in the past year.
yeah, that's interesting. I wonder if one could write an article on their own website and then link to that.
I
That'd
think
be interesting.
any calls to action, you're probably going to get pinched. But I think if you
Gotcha.
took that, did a cut and paste, then I don't think it'd be an issue because when you're answering those questions, you do have information on top going, Paul Brodie, book publisher, Brodie Consultant, and you can actually put book publisher, BrodieConsultant.com or different things like that so they can connect to it that way. But you just can no longer put that direct call to action in, which I think is a shame. But I think what happened is people are just abusing it, like I mentioned.
Yeah, yeah, probably so. Probably so.
Well, and it's interesting too. I've noticed that they're even offering advertising now with it. So you can actually make money depending on how many people actually read your answer. And they've also got a daily digest, which I'm sure you get too, which they answer some of those popular questions. And I'm a little bit of a, I wouldn't say a comic book nerd, but I'm one of these guys, enjoys the Marvel movies and the DC movies. So I get a lot
Yeah,
of
yeah.
responses about Tony Stark and what went on there in Avengers, or what is RDJ like in real life, and those type of things in connection with the publishing type of answers that come on there. So it's interesting how they do some research on you and they look at the algorithm to see what you look at, and then they send you that information on a daily basis on their email digest.
That is funny. I did get that one Tony Stark question. I guess that was really popular, and it did
Mm-hmm.
answer a question that was interesting. Even though I wasn't really, I mean, I thought about it, but I didn't dwell too much, as maybe my sister did, and it was interesting to find the answer to that question. So that was quite interesting. But yeah, answering, when it comes to output and kind of answering questions, we have Medium, we have Quora, we have all these places, and sometimes it just gets overwhelming, frankly,
Yeah.
to go. So, I mean, I'm still figuring out my content strategy and where to publish my articles. Um, I've kind of narrowed it down where I'll just publish. I might publish things on my website and then maybe import it to Medium, and since it supports that tool, and then you won't get an SEO hit as well. So that's something I'm going to try out soon as well.
Yeah, and the nice thing about this is there's so many places to put that information out there. And a nice thing again to Quora is the fact that you get ideas where they ask you about publishing, they ask you about format, and they ask you, what's better, free launch or 99-cent launch. These different type of questions. It really gets you thinking, and it gives you ideas for books. It gives you ideas for blogs,
Mm-hmm.
for all sorts of different
Mm-hmm.
content. So to me, it's almost like an extra wheel I can add to that communication rhythm.
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of hanging out at the water cooler and getting ideas.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about your favorite book. So, what is your favorite book, and what was the number one thing that you learned from it?
Well, there was a book I read a long time ago called Harnessing Complexity, and it was a gift from my brother actually, and it was really cool. I remember reading it, and it kind of helps you understand complex systems. And if you look at the world and everything, uh, from every interaction to nature to from start to finish, everything's a complex system. And so understanding that complexity and how that system works is what I got out of it, and kind of helped me with my mindset and thinking and how to approach problems and how to understand problems, and that sometimes a solution is not very straightforward as we tend to think it is. So it was a really interesting book. I remember it to this day.
And for a final question, what is your favorite quote and why?
Well, for me, it would be "Pay it forward." I like that quote, and the reason is that the more we give, the more we'll receive. A wise friend, said that to me once, and basically, paying it forward inherently adds some sort of emotional intelligence to the equation, and emotional intelligence is something we drastically need in the world today. So, for those that don't know, emotional intelligence is basically your ability to communicate your emotions and kind of handle complex emotional situations. And so, especially in my field in information security, emotional intelligence is paramount because we're trying to sometimes change human behavior, and you can't take a technological approach to solving a human problem. And so, at the end of the day, paying it forward and kind of going that extra mile and being generous, adding to the whole karma equation is, that's how I, try to live, moving forward, I guess.
I have the same exact philosophy. I'm a huge believer it goes around, comes around. You do well, you help other people, it's going to come back in a beautiful way. And we don't do it for that intention. We do the intention of giving back and helping. But from what I've seen, it always tends to come back. I was in Maui last month, and one of the guys I was talking to over there, he owns probably one of my favorite restaurants on the island called Nalu's. And he was talking about their company slogan, which is to eat, live, pono. And Pono is very much like karma. It's just going out there and it's given to the world. It's helping. It's about making everything a better place. Because, I mean, that's the real way to have balance, is to go out there and give back and help. And it does come back in a beautiful way. And I think also the opposite is true. When you're out for yourself, when you're not helping other people, and you're just out for whatever you can get, I think that comes back in a really bad way. So that's
Hmm.
one thing I always tell people. It's like, hey, go out there, live a good life, help people, because it really does come back in an amazing way.
Yeah, yeah. My mentor Jonathan Stark, he mentioned something where, and when I was, trying to understand, I was kind of hesitant about the whole salesy thing about it. And the way he put it is that, you at the end of the day, you're helping people. And so if
Yep.
you don't put your book out there, you're not going to help these people. And I'm like, oh, and because, well, what happened is I would get this question all the time. How do I get into InfoSec? How do I get in? And I would rinse and repeat the same answer. And, I mean, the book was easy to write. It was all in my head. I just had to dump it. Again, like the editing was the hard part. And so, he said, you're at the end of the day, you're helping people. Yeah, sure. They'll buy your book and pay you for it. But, what they get out of it is more than what, they're going to pay for it. So that's what helps me. And I kind of I really appreciated that. It was new to me to get that understanding.
Well, it's one of those things too. It's just, I mean, it works when you're out there to solve a problem, to help a person. I mean, that's why I do what I do with publishing. You know, we're out there to help. And as you and I were talking before the call, you're potentially talking about some marketing down the line. I said, hey, just set up a call with Devin. You know, it's non-pitch. All we want to do is know if we can help, and if there's a fit there, we can explore it. And if not, you know what? We just had a great conversation, and that's literally all we do. And our business has exploded due to it because we're not salesy, we're not gimmicky, we don't write any checks that our butts can't cash. We're very realistic and very open, and I think it just makes such a huge difference when you align your business that way.
Yeah. There's a book written many years ago. I think it's called How to Sell Anything or something like that. And I was curious, and again, I was hesitant about being oh, sorry, The Secret of Selling Anything by Harry Brown. And in that book, again, I was curious, but he just talks about like helping people solve their problems. Just all you have to focus on. And some of the best salespeople I know are actually very close friends, and because they're not salesy at all.
Yep.
And it's really interesting. I wish more people could learn good sales.
Well, and also doing what you say you're going to do. I think that's the biggest thing, is the fact that you do what you say you're going to do, and that's it. I mean, it really is the secret of sales, is just building relationships and building trust, and doing what you say you're going to do, and not promising people the moon and the stars. Being very realistic, being very clear, with no messing about. That's how you build a business.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, Ayman, I want to thank you. One thing I did want to ask too, you talked about your favorite quote, right?
Yeah.
And one thing I wanted to share with you is my favorite quote. And that is,
Sure.
what the mind of man can conceive and believe, it will achieve. W. Clement Stone. I have always believed in that. And I've seen it. You know, you set your mind to something, it's amazing what you can accomplish.
Nice. That's very true. That is very true.
Well, Ayman, I want to thank you for being a guest on the show once again. What is the best way for people to find you online?
Yeah. So I'm on Twitter at Coffee with Ayman, also on Instagram, and on LinkedIn as well. So you search for my name, or you could email me at ayman@gettingintoinfosec.com.
Ayman, thank you once again for being on the show, and I wish you all the best in your author journey ahead.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Thanks again for joining us today. To learn more about how you can be featured in our brand new Get Published business book, go to getpublishedpodcast.com.